Well, thanks for coming, y'all. So one of our suggested topics, I always ask for suggestions. We have our sheets that I hope you'll fill out at the end, and that's how I decided on what we're going to talk about at all of our workshops. So we had a couple suggestions about risk management, and so I wanted to keep this very broad, and so I asked these two lovely ladies to come and speak with us today based off their roles here at UNT, and they're also advisors in addition to that. So it's just going to kind of be about like a little bit of a panel style. And so I want to start off just giving you all a little bit of information about risk management for those who might know have any background about our requirements by Texas state law. So we are required to provide risk management training to advisors once as in their time as an advisor, and officers annually. So we provide that training during our org orientations each fall. And we basically cover 8 different topics. And so those are alcoholic beverages and illegal drugs, hazing, sexual abuse and harassment, fire and other safety issues, travel, behavior at parties, adoption of a risk management policy, and issues regarding persons with disabilities. So we actually have a video. It's similar to, it's the same one that you all watch if you've taken that quiz, and we update that each year. So we're just going to jump right in, and we're going to have each of them kind of introduce themselves briefly and come on in and tell them about their role just briefly on campus, and then I have some questions that I'm going to have them go through.
Okay, well, my name is Rebecca Moreno. I do work in the risk management office here on our campus, and I also am an advisor with one of our Greek organizations.
Hey y'all, my name is Brittany Landau. I'm the coordinator of special projects in the Division of Student Affairs. One of the many things that I do in my role is I serve as the chair of the event safety committee on campus. And so that committee, as some of you might know, some of you might not know, oversees the event planning process and tries to mitigate risky situations for student organization events. So if your organization that you advise is having an event that we deem as having certain elements of risk, either myself, my graduate assistant, or our entire event safety committee will have a conversation with that organization to ensure that we are mitigating any of the situations that come up.
All right, and so like I said, I'm going to ask them to give feedback on each of these questions about their role, as they had mentioned, and then also as an advisor, since they're both advisors too. So in what ways do you all talk with student organizations about risk management?
Mine is definitely on a constant basis. One, again, like Kelly said, I'm an advisor, but also I get plenty of phone calls throughout the day. What about this? What about that? So whether it's from our student organizations to any of the other faculty and staff that are here on our campus as well. But I get questions anywhere from like, can we have animals on our campus, to we want to have an inflatable bouncy house. Can we do that? Let's see, what other random things do I get? Just lots of questions, you know, and there's never, I know that risk management does have a reputation of saying no. Dunking boots, I get that.
That happens.
Yes, that one has
Car
happened.
matches.
Car
Car
matches.
bashing, okay.
I mean, pretty much you can name it and we've been asked. So we never, our goal and our intention is to never say no. We just want to talk to our organizations about, or whoever I have on the phone, let's talk about the logistics of everything and how we can make this work and make sure it's safe and we're not going to harm anyone in this process of the event.
So from my perspective, when any of your student organizations are submitting an event on OrSync, if they need a space on campus, that's what you focus on. So there are certain things that will basically flag me on their event application, just like it'll flag you as an advisor to approve the event, it'll flag me as the event safety committee. So those things can be, it's a very wide range of things. It can be the amount of people at an event, if they're having anybody off campus, let's see what else. Obviously, if there's alcohol, or if there's an inflatable, or if there's any physical activity, any of those things will automatically flag me on it. Food or drink will automatically flag me on it. So there's a whole laundry list of things that might entice the system, the event registration system, to put me on their event application. And then it's my role and my graduate assistant's role to kind of go through each individual event and see what elements are existing that we need to be concerned about, and whether or not we need to take the necessary steps to ensure that there's nothing wrong or nothing that could go wrong with that event. So sometimes it's just the fact that like an event might be tabling on the library mall and they might be giving out candy, well, that's great, and if they put on there it's prepackaged candy and food safety approves it, there's really not much I need to do with that. So we have the proper constituents that have approved that event, I'm okay with it, I'll go ahead and approve it, we won't have a phone conversation or any of that. There are some events that then have a little bit higher elements of risk, that we feel the need to maybe have a phone conversation with them. So maybe they are tabling on the library mall, but maybe they're soliciting for donations for an organization, or maybe they're doing there's a group actually I need to call today or tomorrow that is doing a pie event. So they're using whipped cream on, a paper plate and they're throwing it in people's faces. So yeah, in reality it's not that big of a deal, but there are things we need to think about. So making sure that, they are protecting this, making sure that the student or organization members that are participating are doing it out of their own will. They're not being forced to do it, so it doesn't run into an adhesion issue. Or that if they're out there for 4 hours, that the whipped cream is not just sitting out there because it can go rancid and bad and have an issue. Or they have goggles, so if the people in the organization want to make sure that they're protecting themselves and they're not running into any issues like that. So those are more of those phone conversations that we just like to touch base on and make sure that they're a little bit more minor elements of risk, but we still want to ensure that we're doing our due diligence to ensure nothing happens. But then there's events that are a little bit more risky. For instance, there's a group on campus that just submitted this event yesterday, I believe, and they want to bring a piano on campus and they want to hit it with a baseball bat. We have it with cars. We had a car bash a couple weeks ago. So there are things like that that we feel the need that, as the event safety committee, that we will bring them in and have a physical face-to-face conversation. So Rebecca serves on that committee as a representative from risk management. Callie serves on it as a representative from student activities. We have UNT Police Department. We have facilities representatives. If it's a Greek organization, we have Greek Life. So we have a lot of constituents that come in onto those committee meetings and sit in to have those conversations with students, because we think there's enough risk and there's enough elements of that event that we need to have that face-to-face conversation rather than just a 5-10 minute conversation on the phone. So that's kind of my interaction. From our perspective, I see between 500 and 600 events a semester that come through our queue of things, and so most of them are not what we consider high risk, but there are quite a few that we meet with on a regular basis that have events that are a lot more risky. And so from that point of view, we need to take the proper precautions to make sure that the organization, the students involved, and the university are not liable in any sense of the word.
All right, so since we're talking about events a little bit, let's talk about the role that you play in the planning of events and meetings as an advisor, and what are some things that you've seen from your staff point of view of things that organizations forget in the planning process that advisors could help make sure that they are mentioning to the student organizations to consider during the planning process. That would help them out.
Okay. For me, one of my organization, what they've done, couple of different things, is one, they were wanting to do pen pals with some of the elementary schools and elementary here on our campus. And as an advisor,
I'm sorry, they wanted what?
to do pen pals, like writing letters to a couple of the elementary, and I was like, well, that's great, because they really wanted to help these students who are learning actually English, and so I think they are ESL students, and so they wanted to help them with their English and writing that. So they're like, okay, we'll write letters back and forth in English. Well, that seems great, and it is great. It's a wonderful cause, and I'm really appreciative that they're doing that. I did ask them about, okay, well, we need to take a lot into consideration, because another role that I have within my job in risk management is program involving minors. So anything for program for minors, I want to know about that's happening on our campus, and that includes our student organizations. That is one question that we do ask on the event safety committee. Will there be, because if they say outside guests, and so one of those questions that kind of falls underneath that is, will there be anybody under the age of 18? And so most of the time they say no, or if they do say yes, there might be a couple of them here or there, and they say, well, they're going to be escorted by their parent or guardian. That is absolutely okay. Well, in this instance, for this particular organization, writing letters is a very personal thing, back and forth, and that was it. Not to say that the teachers would not help them read it or anything like that, or vice versa. I mean, the teachers are going to help the students write to the organization members, that type of a thing. But I had to ask them, okay, we're going to go through programs for minor training. I want you to know what happens if somebody says something to you about possible abuse or anything like that. Just things to think of, even though nothing could be harmful. They're not actually physically around or encountering any of these elementary students, we still want to make sure that we are, doing our due diligence to make sure that they are understanding what they are taking on by communicating with them like this.
Well, if there's an issue, they can send their text number. And from that point on, it can be out of control.
Yes, there's so many things that could go extra, and that's part of the training. We call it the abuse prevention or sexual abuse and child molestation awareness training. So we talk about all of that in that training. How what is too far? If you need to talk to somebody else about never giving out your phone number, that type of thing. There's lots of rules and guidelines, and that's something a completely different issue. But I do go into that if anybody is going to be involved with minors in any sort of way outside of the context of more of a one-on-one or anything like that. So. Again, but just something to make sure that they are considering when they're asking to do a project like this. Another project my organization has done was helping people register to vote and that type of a thing, and they also wanted to do, say, okay, well, let's go ahead and send a letter as well, saying I support XYZ, whatever they were trying to support. And one of my questions to them was, when they submitted this application, are they writing their own letters, or are these letters already written for them? What is the verbiage on them? Is it something that is that you have talked to legal about? Because some things, if this is one person's opinion, yes, say Brittany might share my opinion, but she may not share my opinion, and she may take it very offensively that these letters are already handwritten for me. Well, I would have wanted to write blah, blah, blah. So we're just trying to make sure that just giving them possible thoughts. Have you thought about this? But the letters were actually written by somebody else. And it's a nationwide thing that they had. And so, I went ahead and approved it. But again, those are questions that I ask. Why are you doing this? What is the purpose of this? And is everybody going to benefit from them, even if they don't agree with maybe something that you're offering to the entire campus? But make sure that you know what you're doing, and you can kind of provide, I want to say, a defense as to why you're doing this and what you're supporting.
So a couple things that I would say, I echo that absolutely, is purpose is huge. So ensuring that when your groups are submitting something, that it follows in line with the purpose of the organization. That's something that we get a lot is, I got an event request the other day that came through, not as an advisor from an event safety standpoint, but their advisor had approved it, and the title of the event was social. And I was like, what are you doing? What is going on? So making sure we're asking.
Socializing.
Well, literally the description where you're required to put something said social, and the name of the event was social, which is great, and I'm glad their advisor understood what it was, but as somebody who was approving from something else, and I also help advise that organization in an academic role, I had no idea. And so as an advisor, being really diligent about asking those questions. If you don't know what something is, and you don't know what's happening, and they're not transparent about that, ask. Make them revise the application to put the details in there as to what's going to be happening. Because more often than not, I will call an organization when they have something on there that I don't understand and say, hey, what's going on? And 9 times out of 10, it's not anything to worry about. It's like they're tabling or they're doing something else. But there are those times where it's like, okay, well, I don't understand what's going on. Explain it to me. And then we realize it's much bigger than they've actually wanted to, that they've made clear on their applications. So that's a big thing, transparency, and really making sure that their events are aligning with their mission of their organization, and with their constitution as well. They all have to submit a constitution to be a registered organization. So ensuring that those things are matching up, their events and their constitution and their values are all matching up is really important. A couple other things I will say is space-wise and timeliness. One thing from an organization perspective as an advisor is if events are not submitted in the proper amount of time, so we normally say for smaller events, if they're tabling, things like that, 5 business days. If they're much larger, if it's a huge event that you're having 300 people or whatever, it can be submitted the semester before. So ensuring that we are being timely and encouraging our organizations to submit things in a timely manner is so important. Because I would say a ton of times we get events that people want to submit something on Monday for an event that's happening Thursday or Friday. And with all the people that need to approve it, there's just no time to make that happen. I'm not saying we haven't done it, because a lot of us have taken the time and done what we needed to do to make things happen so organizations can have events. But at the same time, we have every right to say, no, we're not going to do this, we're not going to let you have this, because we frankly don't have the time to do it. So ensuring as an advisor that you're encouraging your organization members to submit events in a very timely manner, and giving you enough time to approve, but also giving all the other constituents and the venues and things like that to approve. Because I will say that venues, so whether it be the union, whether it be student activities for classroom spaces, things like that, Greek life even, if they're president and advisor of the organization, so if you have not approved the event, they're not going to book a space for you. Because the advisor has to make sure, the venue has to make sure that the advisor's on board with it. That's why we have advisors in our organizations to oversee some of those. They're really the first line of defense from the student organization to the university. And so with that being said, the advisor hasn't approved it, the university isn't going to go ahead and book it because we feel like, okay, well, the staff member that's advising this group, they're not sure if they want the event to happen. So being timely with that, if you get an email saying, hey, review is requested, look at it, see what's going on, and don't let it hang there for 10 days, because chances are your organization event's probably already passed if we're letting it hang there. So timeliness with that is a big thing as well. There's a lot of other things that I'm sure we'll get into, but those are just some first tips.
All right, so in relation to the 8 different topics that we are consider under risk management, which policies and procedures here on campus have been most beneficial for you to know and utilize in both your role and as an advisor? Yes.
Would you repeat the question?
Yes. So thinking about the 8 different topics that fall under risk management that we talk about with our student organizations, which policies and procedures on campus have been most beneficial to them, for them to know and utilize in both their role and as an advisor? Because we do cover some policies and procedures with your student organizations during orientation each year. So yeah, the topics are alcoholic beverages and illegal drugs.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. I would say all of them are very important because somehow or another, every organization, whether you think about it or not, is going to be touched by it. Yeah. So whether they are actually having an event and having and anything, and yes, we're thinking of one specific type of organization or anything like that. But at the same time, if they go off campus, they're still representing that organization, and so that still could be something that we need to think about. Okay, well, I happen to have, whether say Greek letters, or I happen to have the name of my organization that I'm a part of, or anything like that with me, or on me, some kind of badge or identification. We need to know about some of these things and take that into consideration. I'm not saying they're always getting in trouble, but people will identify that person with that specific organization. Oh, but I saw you doing this or that, even though you're not on campus. So it's been great to know that, to know these, I guess, different topics or anything like that, and discuss them with all of our organizations. I know that's one thing that we do as at least my organization, and we start talking about this before school starts. We get together just to kind of talk about it. Do we have any kind of logistics as to what we want to do? Do we feel like one of these is a little bit more important that we have learned from in the past? That way we can kind of bring it to the forefront of our organization to make sure that A, it doesn't happen again, or B, that we feel like it's a big concern not just with our organization but across campus, and maybe bring lights to other organizations and have them be a little bit more aware of that specific topic.
I would echo that absolutely. I mean, I don't think there's anything that we don't touch on with the groups. I would say travel probably a little less, but the same thing as representing your organization even if you're not here on campus. So, the groups might not need to come to us as a advisor if they are, going to go to, they might tell us, we're going to a conference at UTD. Great, that's awesome. We might not have to approve anything or do anything through that sense, but they also need to make sure that they're representing the university if that's the capacity that they're going in. If there are more than, I think it's 2 organization members together at one time, it's an organization event. So really ensuring that behavior is always on point and they're constantly thinking about that is really crucial. I think all of these things are touched upon with our organizations whenever we have conversations, to be completely honest. There are things that we don't always think about as advisors. So for instance, let's see, so hazing is a good one because I think a lot of the times, we think either Greek organizations or athletic teams, things like that, hazing occurs all the time, and so I think it's just the way we are phrasing it. So if we have an organization for instance, a business honor society, and the organization members have not been inducted into the honor society yet, one of the things that people don't think about is, okay, well, they have all these requirements to do before they get inducted or whatever. That's fine, that's part of their process, no big deal. But the issue you can run into is the fact, okay, so maybe their organization is having an event where they want to do a fundraiser. Maybe they're going to a conference and they want to do a fundraiser. Great, then, no problem, we can make that happen. But if they're saying, okay, your members that are not yet initiated into your honor society have to do, they're all going to be here at the same time, and they have to do 3 hours while the rest of the organization has to do 2, that's hazing, even though we don't think about it that way. So kind of making sure that that's always, these things should always be at the front of our minds to ensure that we are, that we're making sure our organizations are conducting themselves in a great manner, to represent themselves, also represent the university, but also ensure that our students are safe.
All right. So can you talk a little bit about the responsibility that advisors may have if an organization does make a mistake? And if you've had any experiences, I guess, as an advisor that you want to share, or if you've had, how you've, I guess, looped in advisors when an organization has made a mistake and what that process has looked like from your role on campus.
Okay, that's a lot.
Sorry.
No,
It's a good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I will say that for a while, this is just I guess a personal one for me, that for a while what my student organization, this was before the lovely org sync and all of that stuff, I ended up calling I think Student Activities, and I said, hey, what's going on? How come is my organization still happening? What is happening with this organization? Because for about a year, I did not hear anything from my organization that I was still the advisor for. And they're like, yeah, you signed all of these papers. And I was like, nope, have not signed them. I think I had called Student Activities, and I'm just going to back up, kind of give you a little bit more history on this, but one day, for one piece of paper, I was out, and actually I think I was very, very ill and like hospitalized type of a thing. I said, I cannot sign that paper. Go ahead and sign it, and I'm calling the Student Activity Center to let them know where I'm at and that you were signing that on my behalf, and I know about that. Well, they took that as, oh, we'll just sign it for you the rest of infinity, I guess, for as long as they needed it. And so they did that for about a year, and believe me, I had said something to them. I was like, I gave you the one opportunity. I said, and you're forging my signature. I said, so none of those events should have been happening. I said, and you guys should be really in trouble and not even be a part of the organizations and should be punished for that, And yes, I'm a part of that organization. I was a part of that organization as an undergraduate as well. And so for me to say that, to get my own organization in trouble, I think is a very big deal. But to me, I know my boundaries as an organization member, but I also know my boundaries as a staff member to say, hey, this is wrong, and you guys need to know that you're not supposed to be doing that, and reminding them of that. And it's not to say that I wanted them to all be kicked out of school or anything like that. I just needed to remind them gently of, let's do the right thing and on what the right function is to do this and the right steps to take. I think sometimes students do forget that we're there not as like a parent role or anything, or even a fun aunt or uncle, but we're there as somebody to help and guide them through their undergraduate, to make sure that whatever organization they're a part of is going to be an enjoyable one and a great experience for them while they're here on campus. And we just want to keep them safe and make sure that they're not going to get in trouble to the point of you're not going to be welcome on our campus for either ever or for a certain amount of time or anything like that. What was the other part of the question? I'm sorry, another long one.
So I guess in your role here on campus, have you had to loop any advisors in when an organization has maybe made a mistake, or you? Yeah.
A couple of times I've had to loop in other people. Again, a part of being on the event safety committee. Some students, when they have certain events in different venues here on our campus, they do have to have a certificate of insurance or purchase some type of insurance, and that's another role that I do assist with any of our organizations or even outside events that come onto our campus and utilize, like I said, these certain spaces. They do have to have insurance, and so some students are like, oh, no, it's fine, we don't need that. Or they'll give me a certificate of insurance and it's either expired, like really expired. Most of the time for any looks at it, I think she's learning to look
Yeah.
for some of those key points, but, but some of those things, like having to say, oh, well, this inflatable company is not getting us their certificate of insurance to say that, or their inspection to say that they're approved to be on our campus or they're going to be safe. And so we have to say no to that specific company and then suggest maybe something else for them or give them a couple of other options. So they're not going to not have the event, but they're just going to have to use an alternative rather than the one that they originally wanted. And that's really hard to loop in Brittany or somebody else or even their own advisor to say, hey, you know what, we can't do this because this person is not, they're wanting to use, or company, they're not following our own safety guidelines, so we need to use somebody else. And I know a lot of times it really does disappoint the organization that, wanted to use a certain sumo wrestling company or whatever. That's really what they wanted for their event, whatever their event may be. But, we're gonna try to help them and, again, offer them other options and that type of a thing to make their event successful.
Absolutely. So from an advisor perspective, I think just being transparent, building those relationships with the student leaders that they feel, they want to do X, Y, and Z, and they can come and ask questions from an advisor perspective. And I think from an event safety perspective in my role on campus, I do the same thing. So if a student organization wants to do this type of an event, they know that they can always come and ask questions. So I made that very clear to them. I did the Greek orientations and stuff like that, and I said, hey, if you want to do X, Y, and Z, it can be done. You just need to come and talk to me about it, and we can talk about what we can do to make that happen. And so we want, like Rebecca said at the beginning, we don't want to say no. We really don't like saying that because there's a way to do almost anything. And I say almost because I'm sure there's things that we haven't seen yet that we couldn't do. But there's a way to do almost everything on campus. We just need to make sure that we are taking the proper precautions to make it safe. So there have been a couple instances with organizations in my particular role where we've had to have those conversations with the organization members and the advisors. But I will say, I would rather deal with the student organization members because for them it's more of a learning opportunity. Where in the case of the advisors, as an advisor, if I was to hear something that my organization did, I would take it and be like, hey, what's going on? Why do we do this? But from our perspective and from our rules, we're able to make it more of an educational opportunity for them and to be like, hey, what's going on here? What were you thinking when we did this? And have a different kind of conversation with them about, what's going on. I would love to say that I've never had to loop in the dean of students or loop in student activities and I'm never in the business of getting people in trouble, but at the end of the day, we have policies and things that as a university we need to make sure that are followed. And if organizations are going to not follow those policies, then sometimes we have to take measures and say some things and get some proof and get some information out there so we can take the necessary precautions to make sure that their events are safe in the future. And that might mean going to the dean of students and reporting an incident that happened at an event because we think it is that grave of a situation that needs to happen, and then they'll take it from that perspective and move forward. I don't like doing that because at the end of the day, maybe they're here for school and they're here to learn and get an education, so getting people in trouble is never in the realm of things that I like to do, but unfortunately, if we're going to have groups that sometimes completely go off the wall and don't follow, policies and procedures, then there's steps that need to be taken to ensure that they're held accountable for those. So, I do have conversations with advisors. I have fairly good relationships with many of the Greek advisors, and so if they want to have a party with 800 people on campus, they know, hey, let's get our group in here, we can sit down and have a conversation and talk for an hour about what we're going to do. So there's ways to make things happen, and we're in the business of saying yes, we really are, but we also have to make sure that proper things occur to make things happen.
Okay.
So I have,
Yes, and I actually wanted to open it up to y'all for questions now anyway, so you can lead us off.
okay, so we've had a political election, and so there have been people all over campus with tables and stuff. And so this isn't exactly hypothetical, but maybe a little. So let's say that you have a lot of people on tables, doing things for students and trying to encourage them to vote for a political candidate, and it comes to your attention that something in the news that they misappropriated money or they did this wrong or that wrong. To what extent does the responsibility of the university extend extend to a an external organization that you may become aware of improper activities that they're engaging in. I mean, how does the university deal with that? Bonding, is this a legal question?
Yes.
I was like,
yes, this is a
wondering
freedom
about
of
that.
speech versus student organizations is
So do
kind of
you
touchy.
have a trigger of some kind that makes you, where you have to consult with a legal advisor on whether or not to approve something?
If it's a student organization that's tabling, and it's, I mean, most of the time, no, we won't. But there have been student organizations that have come in wanting to bring in XYZ candidate and whatnot. And in those
Sure.
cases, I mean, they're able to do that. It's freedom of speech for them to, and, you know, they're allowed to bring in who they want to bring in. It doesn't mean that how I will go about it from my perspective is we will have a meeting with them and ensure that the elements of the event are properly handled and we have security and we are done and that is covered. But the organization in that sense, from a legal perspective, from what they might be discussing, would be a question for legal. So the event itself would be under our jurisdiction.
So what you'll do is you'll give them a set of rules and you'll refer them to the policies. And if there is misrepresentation, and I'm not making any
Yeah.
accusations or anything,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about this. If there's any misrepresentation that's going on there, what do you do?
Go to legal
Yes, I would
at the
say,
university.
yes, absolutely, go to legal.
Okay.
But I would say even if they are thinking about something and you kind of have, I want to say even a suspicion or you're thinking
Yeah.
about it, I would say give legal a call.
Mhm.
They are wonderful to work with all of their wonderful advice. Sometimes they're a little bit hard to get a hold of, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, whenever you do get a chance to bend their ear, definitely they're happy to give you any kind of advice to make sure that the event is going to be very successful, you know, for our students, and hopefully they're not going to get in any trouble or anything like that. But and we rely a lot on our legal team for.
Do they mix meetings or gatherings or events often?
I have nothing to do with
Students have the ability, and we cannot discriminate on a student event because of the organization or the political group that they represent. So we are,
No, but you can, whether it's political or not, you have some responsibility for what happens on campus, right?
in some senses, yeah, but I can't tell a student what they can and cannot say. So,
No, I wasn't saying
Yeah.
that.
Oh, say whoever they're bringing onto campus and then they're misleading because something they've done. Yes, I understand that. So that's what I'm saying. Again,
yeah.
So I have foreign students in my organization,
mhm,
and they are wonderful,
mhm,
but the home country is not a friend of ours.
mhm.
And so I'm just interested in this particular.
Yeah, I think if the context of that conversation is something of a concern, that is a question for legal, because I can't tell an organization, you know, one way or another on what they say, if it's in a tabling sense or things like that.
I just need to know, I will talk to somebody over here. I just need to know what I can tell them about if they ask me a question. And so I'll just carry it out.
Yeah, so, like I said, I mean, if the event was, you know, a tabling event and they were trying to, I don't know the exact
They're great. They're
context,
wonderful.
but
But if it were, you know, if it were an organization that you found out that
Mhm.
there was something going on behind the scenes that wasn't completely transparent, then I'd talk to you.
I mean, it depends on what the situation is. I think if it's a situation where we think it's like something from a legality perspective, where there's some things going on like in their home country and that would be a conversation. If there's things going on within the organization, where it's kind of some shady things within the organization itself, that would be a conversation for Callie.
And please don't infer anything.
Oh, no, not at all. We just want to make sure that,
Sure.
Yeah, we want to point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
You can always start with our office, and
Yeah.
we can help facilitate a conversation and or, send you off to the next representative and connect you with someone if there is a bigger conversation that has to happen. And I will say, based off my experience, and I'm sure Brittany can say this too, is the more information they can provide about what they're doing is going to help us determine whether we feel there may need to be security or other things happening. We have had some events in the last few years where we know that students are going to come and potentially maybe protest or because they have beliefs that are different from the organization, and that is fine and they have the right to do that, but we want to make sure that we're prepared for those type of events. So the more information that they can provide about what they're doing, who they may have on campus, what they might be talking about, and if you ever have any inkling that something could go south and not go correctly, let us know and we can talk to them about that as well.
And I'm just kind of circling on this
Yeah.
particular topic, talking about protests and things like that. Do they have any resources that tells them that they have rights, but other people do too, and then that their protest can't mean that they can go into a classroom or a place where you've actually paid for the location and basically shut it down because they incur some liability at that point?
So unless the organization has deemed that it's a closed meeting just for their organization members or officers, they cannot tell someone else they cannot enter the room or a meeting or an event.
Okay, so at graduation a few years ago, Governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, attended here. And there are all kinds, I went to the graduation, they actually rescheduled it from Apogee Stadium into Super Pit. And I was on the faculty, I got to see, all of the people walk toward the stage and the security, which was, everybody was about 6'8", weighed 320 pounds, and was armed to the teeth. And there were, obviously, it was an open event, but I read in the paper that there were protests, but I never saw or.
and in situations like that, some people tend to protest outside.
No, they weren't protesting outside.
They could have protested inside and it was peaceful. I mean, a lot of the time, our students are very good about protesting peacefully. They really are. This is one campus that one of the few campuses I've been on that it's handled very well. And I will say, we have a very, very close relationship with the police department. So much so that they come to every single event safety meeting. They're at every single one of them. Both, the captains that we work with have my cell phone number and call or text me if there's an issue or a concern or something. We probably, between the three of us, we probably talk to them at least once a day. I am constantly on the phone with them, and so if there's ever an inkling or any type of concern, they're my first line of defense, and they're the ones that will tell us that. I mean, they ask whenever we have an event, hey, who's going to be even the musical artist? Who's going to be the musical artist? So they can look them up and make sure we have the proper things in place. And so, if that's ever a concern, if that's ever a concern, please let us know, because we can get into contact with the police department and do this. Like, we had an event last spring. There was an event that was a little political of nature, and we were a little concerned. So we had we had done research on the speaker, and we had spoken to the organization, and we provided to police officers because we thought it was necessary, because we thought there was going to be some backlash and some protesting with it. And luckily there were no issues, and there were some people who had different views who came into the event, which was they had the ability to do because it was an open event. But we just want to ensure that we have all the information. So like Hallie said, having the organization, you guys being very transparent with us, and we are able to ensure what might be needed to make it successful and make it safe.
Did you say that the organization does have the option to make something a closed event?
Yeah, if they want to have just a meeting for their organization members, that is an option, but they have to make that known when they are filling out the event application. But I mean, that is an option that they have, especially if they're gonna be talking about certain things that only their organization should be discussing. A lot of the organizations probably only do this when they have maybe their executive board or officer meetings, but they do have the ability to do that. They can't go back on that if they hear something, obviously, that, you know, maybe they've heard that others want to come because of what they're doing. We don't want them to necessarily go back on their word of, you know, letting anyone in and then deciding that, no, we're just going to keep this to our members. But yeah, they do have the option to do.
So I asked a question that went back to the related thing, so back to politics. Just in general about students or faculty wearing, say, a t-shirt or something indicating one candidate over another. I would assume that if this organization with the Young Democrats or the Young Republicans, they could do that, right? I mean, they could do it. But what if it's not one of those, and it's whatever it is, it's the history club or the art club or something, and the president of the organization is wearing a t-shirt for one candidate? Is that okay?
It's a student, they can do what they want.
Yeah, they are able to do that, and I will say,
I mean,
this has come up in the past, so they're able to, anyone is able to do that, a faculty, staff member, student, whoever. And I will say that this has come up also with endorsing like students for like student body president or things like that as well. I would just make sure the organization has a discussion about, and you can maybe let them know this too, that if one person's wearing it and, or if the organization is wanting to maybe like endorse a student for student body president, for example, that there's some type of vote and discussion about that, and there's not just one person making that decision and representing the organization endorsing that person. So I would kind of mention that to them, but they're definitely able to wear anything and, you know.
as long as they're not putting undue pressure and say, if you don't wear
Correct,
this t-shirt, you can't be a member of this club.
Exactly.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Does UNT have a policy on faculty? I mean, I've always thought it'd be terribly bad taste to, as a faculty member, wearing a candidate's t-shirt while I'm giving a lecture.
Oh, no.
So, yeah,
Are
there's
you allowed
not
to
a
do that?
policy, yeah, there's not a policy in place. There's not.
Okay, so
Um,
I could wear a Ted Cruz or I could wear a Beto O'Rourke t-shirt to
You
class.
definitely could.
I would never do it. I think that'd be terribly bad taste to make the students
Yeah.
feel like they have to
Yeah.
support
Yeah.
that candidate.
Correct,
But
yes.
there's no
and
policy.
There is no policy in place for, yeah, anything like that. Essentially, it would probably, I mean, it would fall under free speech.
Fall under
There is
undue influence.
That too, yes. So, yeah, you would be able to do that if you'd like.
So they have no, they can talk about it. I mean, I would try to leave politics completely out of it.
Yeah.
Students are so sensitive
Yes.
these days that if you mention, you know, the economy and happen to identify the administration, somebody's going to be irritated. And I just basically tell them to, this is a business, you know, course. I'm talking about something that's involving in business. You're going to have to deal with it. And, but I was, you know, I'm kind of disturbed that the students feel like many times they can make a public groan or something else if you go, you know, okay, so you've got to cover this material. And so you get a groan or two from this side for this part of the material, but you get a groan from the other side. And I talked to them, I said, now stop that. But it's, you know, it's pretty irritating from time to time to have to negotiate this. I have a class, I have to teach material. And
Well, that's the nature of higher education. These are all
Yeah,
generally
I
students who are
understand.
coming from, you know, having their first experience away from home, and they're learning.
what they want their values and beliefs to be without other pressure and other people kind of maybe telling them what they should believe and have as their core values. So I think there's a lot of growth and just kind of experiences that they have here.
Well, somewhere
That
in
will
your
help them.
advice, they ought to be made aware of what their rights and responsibilities are inside and outside of the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
or inside a university meeting and outside of a university meeting. And the rights that they have versus the rights that other people have, because it becomes a financial burden on the students that don't share either side if they have to surrender part of class time to them. They'd much rather go home than spend class time.
I have a question about, so this is my first time being a faculty advisor for organization. So this presentation was helpful in terms of risk management, but I also teach classes where I'm taking students outside of the classroom, working with youth and service learning projects that I've gotten approval from my chair and dean and Career Connect and all types of different facets on campus. Is there a version of this that's for like faculty that like rules we have to apply, or even the talk when you were saying that you give a training on of working with minors and things like that? Like I teach that in my class. We get background checks from the schools we're in, but is there an official system? If so, who do I go to? You. Let me get your like some stuff I don't know until
You're talking about not as part of any one of the official.
But it may
sanctioned
overlap
student
with my
organizations.
student organization. I'm in the media arts department. We do service learning, we do community events. We're starting a youth media lab. So it's within my class, and then some of the students from the organization, there's an overlap. So is that, so I didn't know, so you're the same,
Same
do you have your card on you?
I do not have my card on
Let
me,
me,
but I will-
what's your first and last name again?
Rebecca, Rebekah, last name Moreno, Moreno.
Do you have a dot in between your name for the email? Okay. Yeah, some of the things I just don't, like I said, I went through a lot of different people here, and like we had an event last spring out in the park off campus, a huge outdoor screening, lots of community people. We had security from the park. We went through legal for insurance, but I'm like, I just felt like we should have probably met about safety things, but I just didn't know that that was a thing. So most
Well, it
courses.
seems like legal would have.
I don't know, I just, there was a, I feel like, yeah.
Off
no.
campus could be a little different though. So
Right.
if it's an event off campus, whether it be a student organization or a department event, it gets a little wonky there because
Okay.
students don't, like, if it's a student organization, they're not gonna submit an event through OrgSync because they don't need a space on campus. So it's not necessary for us to see it. It's good, I mean, the amount of emails I get constantly from the police department of, hey, this group is doing this event off campus. Great, but the liability is now completely on the organization because it's not happening on campus. So that's what a lot of this
So are you
conversation is
saying
about.
that they don't have to go through OrgSync if they want to do something completely off campus?
Correct. That's correct. So
Oh, I
that's,
didn't realize that.
and that's made a lot of the student organizations understand that for the fact that it takes the liability off the university. So our role, or my role I should say, is to mitigate the risk of the student organization. But when it comes to student organization events, if they're happening on campus, that's really where my realm is. So I will still do my due diligence when there's an event happening off campus to ensure that they're taking the proper steps, but the university doesn't have that liability because it's not being done here.
Even if there's like UNT t-shirts, like we represented the school in
Yep.
every way, but no one like, there's no one that
I
told
mean,
us
there's
you
still-
need to fill out
There's still
this-
reputational.
Right,
Right.
but.
Yeah, and there is some things in the Code of Student Conduct
Yeah.
that relate to if a student organization is having something off campus, or, that they can still be liable for something that happens, or they could still, I guess, essentially have some type of disciplinary action.
It could be held to code of conduct because they are representing the university.
Correct.
But from a liability perspective, if it's not
Yes.
happening on campus, then we all do not have, the university as a whole does not have as much at all because it's not in a facility that we are in control of.
And we're really hoping that they're talking to all of you as advisors about things that they're having off campus. The things that they do generally come to us and they say, hey, can we do this? It's off campus. For example, we'll have some graduate student organizations, probably the most popular. They want to maybe have something off campus at a bar or something like that. That's totally fine, as long as they are following law and doing things legally. They're an establishment. I mean, they are free to go and do those type of events. We do allow them to submit a calendar invite. So essentially they go through the event application, just say they don't want space on campus, and we can still add it to their calendar so others can see. So we do have a lot of organizations who will submit like their fundraisers that are happening off campus, or maybe some community service that they're doing off campus. But it's really up to the organization, president and officers and members, and hopefully they're talking with all of you to make sure that they would be following any type of, anything legality-wise that they would need to. Yes.
Yeah, you use this word off campus. We're in a digital world now as well. So what happens if a student organization is cyberbullying? Is that on campus or off campus?
Cyberbullying would be under the student code of conduct. So
Okay,
that would
so it
still,
wouldn't come under a student.
it could come up under a student organization,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes, and it could definitely fall into, there's some hazing things and this stuff as well, and so that would definitely fall
Almost
under.
hazing usually implies within an organization, I assume.
Correct.
Yes, it has happened externally though.
You call that
So
hazing? It's not
It
even.
could still be hazing in some sense of the word, depending, maybe it's somebody who didn't get into the organization. And they're trying to prove themselves to get into the organization. They're not technically a member of the organization, but it's still hazing from an external perspective. I mean, there are things that are like that as well, but cyberbullying definitely is something from
Yes.
a code of conduct that we can definitely work on.
Correct, and the Dean of Students would be the best contact about that. They actually have a website, report.unt.edu, and so students, staff, faculty can go on there. There's a section just for student organizations, so if you report something that happened for a student organization, so maybe you as an advisor or a member wants to report a student organization or someone else about something that occurred, they can do that. We have had instances of cyberbullying within student organizations, and I've had to report those
It's kind of a
instances.
fine line.
The group me, the social media, all of those
Yeah.
things, we've had to submit documentation about all of those things that are happening, so that it definitely does occur, and it would all go through the Dean of Students.
What about, because I don't know what the difference, it's a kind of fine line, slander or libel. Is that under this, student activities, or it goes back to maybe more like the Dean of Students Code of Conduct? An organization could,
Yeah.
right, could slander or libel somebody.
Absolutely, that would still be under Dean of Students.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is a fine line, you're absolutely right, and I think it depends on if it is an individual that is doing it, or if it's the organization itself, or if it is a newspaper, or in what sense. And so some of it would go, like if it was a newspaper or a publication that the student organization is putting out, it would go to Dean of Students, but also go to legal. And those conversations. But if it's internally through the student organization, it would still be
Basically, any complaint about a student, even our faculty or staff member, if like a student has a complaint, about you and your class or something, or you as an advisor, that's basically all going through the Dean of Students office. They're the ones who are really hearing all of those different complaints and things that are happening within a student organization, within a classroom, within anything really happening on campus that relates to them as a student.
So, last thing, because
Yeah.
hate speech.
Okay.
That's protected speech for the most part, but it is within the eye of the beholder what that actually constitutes. And so does the university have any policy on that? I hope not. But I just wonder, because that's the very word incites emotions. And so do we have anything like that? I mean, I have a sister-in-law, and so anything she doesn't like is hate speech.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to the protest we had last year on campus. There was a lot of hate speech going on there from outside constituents. We don't have the university doesn't have the right to shut them down, but we do have the right to ensure that our students are taken care of. So that means we were able to get police out there to ensure that there wasn't any violence going on, and it was peaceful protesting. And even though they were saying things that people, saw as hateful, it still wasn't proper. So making sure we have that intake, making sure our Dean of Students is aware. So
Well, I
we need
had to
that
cover
kind of
this
thing.
in my courses, and what I basically say is that you have the First Amendment.
Yeah.
But you also have a responsibility, and other people have rights as well. And then finally, we may not all agree, but you cannot incite any kind of violence. But
Absolutely.
even that description is up for grabs.
It is. That's the hard part with it.
Yeah, we have a moving target here. Thank you
Yes.
very much.
All right, any last questions? If you got any last questions, feel free to hang around. We'll stay for a few minutes as well. And I appreciate you all coming. Thank you.